Imagine for a moment. You're sitting in a coffee shop observing two people. To your left, there's someone you've known for years. A genuinely good person. They help everyone. They donate their time. They never think only of themselves. And when you look at their financial life, you see constant struggle, tight bills, indefinitely postponed dreams. To your right, there's someone you know isn't exactly a model of virtue. This person thinks of themselves first. They negotiate aggressively. They don't waste time with guilt or others' opinions. And this person has prosperity, has financial freedom, has the kind of life that the good person to your left secretly desires but never admits out loud. And you wonder, why does the universe work this way? Why does goodness seem incompatible with wealth? Why are the most generous people you know often the most broke? And you conclude that maybe the world is simply unfair. Maybe money really does corrupt. Maybe being good means accepting poverty as the price of integrity. Now imagine a completely different scene. Imagine discovering that this incompatibility between goodness and wealth isn't a universal law. It's a psychological prison. A belief deeply buried in your unconscious that was planted there by past experiences, by cultural messages, by childhood interpretations about how the world works. Imagine discovering there's a part of you, a shadow part you've never consciously examined, that believes with absolute conviction that if you become rich, you'll stop being a good person. And this part works tirelessly behind the scenes of your mind, creating financial self-sabotage so subtle you don't even notice. It makes you undercharge for your services because charging fair value seems greedy. It makes you avoid growth opportunities because ambition seems selfish. It makes you feel uncomfortable when someone praises you or offers you more money because a primitive part of you believes prosperity will transform you into everything you despise. And imagine there's a path to integrate this shadow, to disarm this limiting belief, and finally allow goodness and prosperity to coexist harmoniously within you. The difference between these two versions of you isn't luck. It's not lack of opportunity. It's not the system conspiring against good people. It's an unconscious shadow controlling your financial decisions without you having the slightest idea it exists. And today I'm going to show you exactly how this shadow was constructed, why it keeps you stuck in scarcity despite your competence and goodness, and what you can do to finally release this psychological prison. Especially when we get to the concept Jung called identification with the martyr persona, everything will start making painfully clear sense. Most good people in 2025 still carry a deeply ingrained fundamental belief. This belief says there's a moral hierarchy where goodness is at the top and money is near the bottom. This belief whispers that truly virtuous people don't worry about material things. That focusing on financial prosperity is superficial, selfish, morally inferior. And when nothing works financially despite all effort, these people conclude they're simply too good for this cruel capitalist world. But Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who spent decades exploring the depths of the human psyche, discovered something radically different. He discovered this incompatibility between goodness and wealth isn't a spiritual truth. It's a psychological defense. It's what happens when you exile essential parts of who you are to the shadow and then spend your life fighting against distorted versions of these parts. The truth almost no one tells you is this. There exists within you a set of qualities Jung would call shadow aspects of success. These are qualities like ambition, assertiveness, self-focus, ability to say no, willingness to negotiate in your favor, comfort with visibility and recognition. These qualities aren't inherently bad. But at some point in your life you learn they are. Maybe you saw someone being ambitious and selfish simultaneously and concluded ambition causes selfishness. Maybe you were criticized as a child for wanting attention and learned that desiring to be seen is shameful. Maybe you grew up in a family or culture that glorified sacrifice and demonized prosperity. And slowly, without realizing, you began exiling these qualities to your shadow. You unconsciously decided that to be loved, to be accepted, to be good, you needed to completely reject any trait that resembled greed, selfishness, or arrogance. And your shadow obeyed. It took ambition, assertiveness, and self-focus and locked all of it in the basement of your psyche. But here's the problem. These qualities don't disappear just because you rejected them. They remain alive in the shadow. And from there, they work against you in ways you can't consciously see. Jung realized that the more you reject a part of yourself, the more power that part gains over you through unconscious compensation. It's like compressing a spring. The more you push down, the stronger the counterpressure becomes. So when you completely reject ambition because you fear being greedy, your shadow creates the extreme opposite. It creates financial passivity so deep you can't even ask for a raise you deserve. When you reject assertiveness because you fear being aggressive, your shadow creates compliance so extreme people constantly take advantage of you. When you reject self-focus because you fear being selfish, your shadow creates self-sacrifice so destructive you become invisible in your own financial decisions. And all this happens with an internal narrative that sounds virtuous. You're not being passive, you're being humble. You're not being compliant, you're being generous. You're not sacrificing yourself, you're being altruistic. But beneath this virtuous narrative, your financial life is in ruins and you don't understand why. So here's the first revolutionary truth you need to integrate deeply. When good people don't get rich, it's not because the universe rewards wickedness. It's because these people built a psychological identity where goodness and prosperity are mutually exclusive. And this identity operates as a self-fulfilling prophecy. You unconsciously believe getting rich will corrupt you, so you sabotage every opportunity to get rich, and then your poverty confirms you're really a good person because good people are poor. It's a closed, hermetic cycle that perpetuates itself through the shadow. And until you name this shadow, until you bring this dynamic to the light of consciousness, you'll remain stuck in this frustrating pattern where competence doesn't generate results and effort doesn't generate proportional reward. Let me show you how this works in practice with concrete examples that will probably resonate painfully. Imagine you're a therapist, coach, consultant, any professional who helps people. You're genuinely good at what you do. Your clients transform their lives working with you. But when it comes time to price your services, something strange happens. You feel a knot in your stomach when you think about charging market value. An internal voice whispers that if you charge too much, you're taking advantage of people's vulnerability. You're putting profit above helping. You're being exactly the kind of greedy person you despise. So you charge less. Much less. You justify it saying you want your services to be accessible. That you're not in it for the money. That impact matters more than revenue. And all this sounds noble. But the result is you work exhaustingly, help dozens of people, and can barely pay your own bills. This isn't goodness. This is shadow. It's your shadow convincing you that fair financial value equals moral exploitation. Or take another example. You have a promotion opportunity at work. You're qualified. You deserve it. But the promotion means more visibility, more responsibility, more money, more power. And a part of you recoils in horror. Because you associate power with abuse. You've seen people with power become arrogant, insensitive, disconnected. So your shadow whispers that if you accept this promotion, you'll become like these people. You'll lose your humility, your empathy, your essence. So you sabotage your own candidacy. Maybe you don't promote yourself adequately. Maybe you minimize your achievements in the interview. Maybe you simply don't apply. And when another less qualified person gets the position, you feel a strange mixture of relief and resentment. Relief because you avoided the imaginary danger of corruption. Resentment because some part of you knows you deserved it, but you never connect the dots. You never realize your goodness didn't protect you from corruption. Your shadow protected you from success. Jung identified this as the martyr archetype. The martyr is someone who finds identity and meaning in suffering. For the martyr, prosperity is an existential threat because if you're no longer suffering, who are you? If you're no longer struggling financially, what's your story? The martyr needs scarcity to maintain the narrative that they're good specifically because they sacrifice. And this martyr identity is incredibly seductive for good people because it offers moral superiority as compensation for material failure. You may not have money, but you have integrity. You may not have prosperity, but you have purity. You may not have success, but you have soul. And this psychological equation works perfectly until the day you realize integrity without resources means you can't help anyone at the scale you could. Purity without prosperity means your children have fewer opportunities than you'd like to give. Soul without success means you die with your music still inside you. And in that moment of brutal clarity, you begin questioning whether this bargain was really worth it. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand before we move forward. Your shadow isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to protect you. When it blocks prosperity, it genuinely believes it's saving you from moral corruption. When it sabotages opportunities, it believes it's preserving your goodness. When it keeps you small and invisible, it believes it's keeping you safe from judgment, from envy, from overwhelming responsibility. The shadow isn't a villain. It's a scared child in the basement of your psyche trying to protect you from dangers it perceived when you were too young to process nuance. And this understanding changes everything. Because you can't win a war against a part of you that's trying to protect you. You can only negotiate. You can only integrate. You can only bring this scared part to the light and show it that prosperity doesn't have to mean corruption. That ambition can coexist with compassion. That you can have money and keep your soul. Let me give you a practical and deep method for how to do this integration. It starts with naming your shadow-specific belief. Not a vague, generic belief, but the precise belief operating in you. So close your eyes for a moment right now and complete this sentence internally. I believe that if I become rich, I will become. And wait. Wait for the answer that emerges. Maybe it's greedy. Maybe it's selfish. Maybe it's arrogant. Maybe it's corrupt. Maybe it's alone. Maybe it's hated. Whatever emerges, that's your shadow speaking. That's the specific belief blocking your prosperity. And now comes the crucial part. You don't argue with this belief. You don't try to convince your shadow it's wrong. Because for it's not wrong. It's protecting you based on evidence it collected. So instead you do something different. You ask, where did this belief come from? When was the first time I learned that wealth corrupts goodness? And often what emerges is a memory. Maybe you saw your father obsessed with money and emotionally absent. Maybe you were raised in a religion that preached poverty is virtuous. Maybe you saw someone rich being cruel and concluded money causes cruelty. Whatever the origin, you recognize it. You validate. You say internally, it makes sense, I learned this in that context. A child seeing that would naturally conclude this. And then comes the reintegration step Jung considered essential. You look for counterexamples. You look for people who have prosperity and goodness simultaneously. And they exist. There are rich people who are generous. There are successful people who maintain humility. There are people with power who use that power to serve. Maybe you need to actively search for these examples because your shadow unconsciously filtered them from your perception. But they exist. And when you find these examples, you show your shadow. You say, look, it's possible to have prosperity without losing goodness. It's not guaranteed. But it's possible. And possibility is all you need to begin dissolving the absolute belief of incompatibility. Because once your shadow sees prosperity and goodness can coexist, it stops blocking one to protect the other. It begins collaborating instead of sabotaging. Jung also talked about something deeply important in this process. He called it differentiation between the persona and the self. The persona is the mask you wear for the world. For many good people, the persona is built entirely around being seen as altruistic, generous, selfless. And anything that threatens this image is exiled to the shadow. So ambition is exiled because it threatens the persona of humility. Assertiveness is exiled because it threatens the persona of compliance. Self-focus is exiled because it threatens the persona of sacrifice. But the self, your deepest authentic being, needs all these qualities to fully express itself. The self needs ambition to grow. The self needs assertiveness to protect itself. The self needs self-focus to know what it really wants. And when you live only through the persona rejecting the self, you create what Jung called neurosis. You become an impoverished version of who you could be. Not spiritually, but literally, financially, materially. Because you cut off access to the very qualities that generate prosperity in the real world. The integration Jung proposed doesn't mean abandoning goodness. It means expanding your definition of goodness to include caring for yourself. It means recognizing you can be generous and charge your worth. You can be compassionate and set boundaries. You can be humble and ambitious. These aren't contradictions. They're complementarities. They're different aspects of a mature, integrated psyche. But to get there, you need to do something that will seem scary initially. You need to allow your shadow to express the qualities you exiled in a conscious, mature way. This doesn't mean becoming greedy. It means allowing healthy ambition. It doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means having healthy self-focus. It doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means having healthy confidence. And the difference between the shadow version and the integrated version of these qualities is consciousness. Greed is ambition without consciousness. Selfishness is self-focus without consideration for others. Arrogance is confidence without humility. But conscious ambition is the engine of growth. Conscious self-focus is the foundation of self-care. Conscious confidence is the platform of contribution. And all these integrated qualities naturally generate prosperity because they allow you to position yourself in the world in a way that your value is recognized and rewarded. There's another fascinating aspect of all this Jung explored deeply. He observed many good people unconsciously project their shadow qualities onto rich people. So when you see someone prosperous, you automatically assume they're greedy, selfish, corrupt, even without real evidence. This is projection. You're seeing in them the qualities you exiled in yourself. And this projection serves an important psychological function. It keeps your good person identity intact by placing all wickedness in others. But the cost of this projection is enormous. Because while you project greed onto rich people, you can't learn from them. You can't model their success strategies. You can't integrate their useful qualities. You keep them in the category of moral enemy, and then you guarantee you'll never become like them. Never prosperous. And your shadow is perfectly satisfied with this arrangement because it protected you from the imaginary danger of corruption by keeping you away from everything that looks like wealth. Jung would say the path of individuation, the path of becoming who you really are, requires withdrawing these projections. Requires looking at prosperous people with nuance instead of absolute judgment. Some are truly corrupt. But some are good. Some use their wealth to cause harm. But others use it to cause immense impact. And when you stop seeing prosperity as automatic evidence of moral corruption, you open psychological space to allow your own prosperity without betraying your goodness. You begin seeing wealth as a neutral tool that can be used for good or evil depending on the character of the person who possesses it. And if you're genuinely a good person, then your wealth will be directed in good ways. But you'll never have the chance to prove it if your shadow blocks wealth before it arrives. Now let me give you an extremely powerful practical integration protocol you can start today. First, identify 3 specific areas where you systematically undercharge, undernegotiate, or underposition yourself. Don't choose 10 areas. Choose 3. The 3 where sabotage is most obvious. Second, for each of these areas, complete this sentence in writing. If I charged my real value here, I would be afraid of becoming. And write the answer that emerges. Maybe it's greedy. Maybe it's inaccessible. Maybe it's superior. Whatever it is, that's the specific shadow quality blocking value in this area. Third, for each shadow quality, find 3 real examples of people who have prosperity in this area and who don't manifest this negative quality. People who charge well and aren't greedy. People who are successful and aren't inaccessible. People who have status and aren't superior. When you find these examples, you break the absolute belief that prosperity inevitably generates corruption. Fourth, experiment for 30 days increasing your value by just 20% in these 3 areas. Don't double your price all at once. Just 20%. Enough to create discomfort but not panic. And observe what your shadow does. It will scream. It will create guilt. It will generate fear. But instead of retreating, you'll do Jungian dialogue. You'll say to this scared part, I know you're afraid this will corrupt me, but we're going to do an experiment. We'll charge 20% more for 30 days and observe if I become a worse person. And if in 30 days I've lost my goodness, we'll go back. But if in 30 days I'm still the same good person just with a bit more resources, then we've proven the belief was wrong. When you do this experiment honestly, something remarkable happens. You discover charging your worth didn't transform you into a monster. You still help people. You still care. You still have empathy. The only difference is now you have a bit more resources to live, to invest, to cause greater impact. And this experiential evidence is infinitely more powerful than any logical argument. Your shadow trusts experience, not theory. So when you demonstrate through consistent action that prosperity can coexist with goodness, your shadow slowly relaxes extreme vigilance. It stops blocking every financial opportunity as if it were a moral threat. And gradually, Through dozens of these small, safe experiments, you rebuild your psychological identity where goodness and prosperity don't just coexist but mutually support each other. Because the more resources you have, the more impact you can generate. The more financial freedom you conquer, the more you can choose projects for meaning instead of necessity. The more prosperity you integrate, the more you can be generous in ways that truly matter instead of just performing sacrifice to maintain a martyr identity. Jung also emphasized this integration process is never linear. You'll have relapses. You'll have moments where shadow retakes control and you go back to undercharging, under-negotiating, under-positioning. This is normal. This is part of the journey. What matters isn't never failing. What matters is recognizing when you failed and understanding why. Maybe a client asked for a discount and you gave it even knowing you shouldn't. Instead of judging yourself, you investigate. What activated my shadow in this moment? Maybe it was fear of rejection. Maybe it was guilt of having more than others. Maybe it was the old belief that if you say no, you're no longer a good person. Whatever it was, you name it, you validate it, and you reaffirm your integration intention. You say to your shadow, I understand you were trying to protect me. But protection through poverty is no longer serving. We're choosing a different path now. And this consistent reaffirmation, repeated hundreds of times over months and years, is what gradually transforms the relationship between consciousness and shadow from combat to collaboration. And there's a profound twist to all this that can completely change how you see your financial history. Jung said often the traits that most shame you in your shadow are exactly the traits your soul most needs to fulfill its purpose. So if you're someone who spent your whole life rejecting ambition, maybe your soul needs ambition to realize the vision you came to bring to the world. If you rejected assertiveness, maybe your soul needs assertiveness to protect this vision from being diluted or sabotaged. If you rejected self-focus, maybe your soul needs self-focus to have enough energy to serve at the level it's capable. And when you recognize the qualities you exiled aren't enemies of your goodness but rather essential tools for your maximum contribution, shame dissolves. You stop seeing ambition as greed and start seeing it as an engine. You stop seeing assertiveness as aggression and start seeing it as protection. You stop seeing self-focus as selfishness and start seeing it as sustainability. And these reintegrated qualities naturally generate prosperity because they allow you to position yourself in the world authentically and powerfully. So here's the final integration roadmap that synthesizes all this into a daily practice. Every morning for 5 minutes, you'll do what Jung would call active imagination with your financial shadow. You'll sit in silence, close your eyes, and visualize the part of you that fears prosperity. Maybe it appears as a child. Maybe as a voice. Maybe as a sensation in your chest. However it appears, you recognize its presence. And then you initiate dialogue. You ask, what are you afraid of today? And you listen. Maybe it says it fears if you grow financially, you'll lose friends. Maybe it says it fears prosperity will transform you into your greedy father. Maybe it says it fears if you shine you'll be attacked. Whatever emerges, you validate. You say, I understand this fear. It makes sense. And then you offer a new perspective. You say, what if we could grow financially and keep our friendships? What if we could have prosperity and be different from my father? What if we could shine and protect ourselves adequately? You don't try to convince. You offer possibility. And over weeks doing this daily, your shadow begins considering that maybe, just maybe, the absolute belief was wrong. Maybe prosperity and goodness aren't mutually exclusive. Maybe they can dance together. And as this integration progresses, you'll notice subtle but profound changes. You'll feel less guilt when someone offers you money. You'll negotiate with more firmness without feeling you're being cruel. You'll set prices based on value instead of based on how much you think people can pay. You'll accept growth opportunities without paralyzing fear that success will corrupt you. And slowly, your external financial reality begins reflecting internal transformation. Not overnight. Not magically. But consistently. Because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer using half your energy to block the other half. You're aligned. Consciousness and shadow working together toward the same goal. And from this alignment is born a form of prosperity that's sustainable because it doesn't require you to betray who you are. You don't become less good. You become more complete. You integrate qualities that were always in you but were exiled by fear. And these integrated qualities finally allow your internal value to translate into external value recognized and rewarded by the world. If you apply this Jungian approach I just described with brutal honesty and deep patience, the incompatibility between goodness and prosperity you've carried your whole life will begin dissolving. Not because you became corrupt, but because you finally understood goodness without resources is limited goodness. That you can be moral and prosperous. That you can have soul and have success. And that maybe, just maybe, the best people should be the richest because they'd make the best use of these resources. Jung believed individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, requires integrating all aspects of yourself, including the aspects you judge as shadowy. And for many good people, the most shadowy aspects are exactly those that generate material prosperity. Ambition, assertiveness, self-focus, comfort with power, ability to receive without guilt. When you consciously integrate these aspects, you don't become a worse person who is rich. You become a better person who finally has resources to live your goodness at maximum scale. So I want to leave you with a question that can change everything. If you had 10 times more money than you have now, maintaining exactly the same character and values you have, what would you do with that money? How would you use it? Who would you help? What impact would you cause? And if the answer moves you, if the answer shows you'd use prosperity for good, then why is your shadow blocking this possibility? Why are you depriving yourself of resources that would allow you to live your goodness more fully? If you made it to this point in the video, it means something in this Jungian approach resonated deeply. It means you recognized your own shadow in these words. So subscribe to the Shadow Dialogue channel because I'll continue exploring these deep principles practically. Leave a comment telling me what specific belief about wealth you discovered is blocking your prosperity. Is it that rich people are greedy? That money corrupts? That you don't deserve it? That prosperity will make you lose friends? And if you want to understand how this same shadow is blocking not just your wealth but also your ability to act on your goals, I have a complete video about procrastination and shadow that will appear on your screen now. See you there. Remember, I'm not a therapist. This content is for educational purposes. Any real transformation depends on your commitment to honest investigation and consistent practice.
If this resonated with you, subscribe to the Shadow Dialogue and hit that like button. Your transformation starts with one click. See you in the next video.